Hey, how you guys doing? My name is Lamonte Stennis, and my project presentation will be on the moon. Okay, so for you those who didn't know, the moon is also known as Luna. It has no significant atmosphere, is geologically dead, and it's actually the fifth largest moon in the solar system. It's pretty large compared to other moons. It's like one third the size of Earth, whereas other moons are probably like 1 to 5, 10% of their planet size. So that's pretty interesting. Also, it does has ice at the north and south poles because where they're at, they're so deep that the sun rays do not touch them. It's kind of like our north and south poles where they're like frozen because of the lack of sun rays they get. But yeah, they have ice on the north and the south poles of the moon, and it's like very dark there also. How was the moon formed? So the solar system began off with like a crash, sort of say, where everything kind of like imploded, and that's how it was formed, and it was centered around the sun. So during those early periods, there was a lot of movement going on, a lot of stuff being tossed around, and stuff trying to just find its place in the galaxy. And so that's called the early heavy bombardment period. So it's believed that there was collision between Earth and another object, a very large object, which caused everything to shatter. It was a ball of debris everywhere, and eventually it was able to form through its gravitational pull a whole new moon, and it started to orbit around the Earth. So that's how the moon was formed. All right, so there are 8 different phases of the moon. There's the new moon, the waxing crescent, first quarter moon, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, and the waning crescent. The moon is shaped just like the Earth, like most planets in our solar system and most moons. Is always half illuminated by the sun. And as the moon travels around Earth, we see more or less of it illuminated. So it takes the moon about 30 days to pass around the Earth. And that is where we get the term month from moon. So that's how they came up with the term month. The moon phases describe how much of the moon's disk is illuminated from our perspective. Like I said, there are 8 phases. You can go outside sometimes in the daytime and see the moon. Typically, it's easier to see at night, especially dusk or dawn when the sun isn't shining as bright. Okay, so far we haven't found any life on the moon besides those that have landed there. The first people to land on the moon was Russia. They landed a unmanned probe. They didn't land any human beings then. So the first human beings was actually landed by the United States. We have put 12 people on the moon. The first 2 were Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from Apollo 11, and they was assisted by Michael Collins. He wasn't able to lead the spacecraft because they needed someone behind, to take pictures and assist them and stuff like that. So Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong were actually the first 2 to land on the moon. The effects of the moon on the Earth. The moon affects the Earth through its gravitational pull. It affects the tide levels in 6-hour increments. There's low tides and high tides. So a high tide is basically when the Earth is facing the moon. You'll have a tidal bulge called the direct side. And therefore, high tides occur simultaneously on the opposite side of the Earth. Low tides are when the waters are receding between the high tides. So these phases happen every 6 hours. So there's usually 2 low tides and 2 high tides throughout the day. Also, there are spring and neap tides. This one is at a full or new moon phase. High tides are at its highest and low tides are at its lowest. These occur when the sun, moon, and earth all line up together. The neap tides occur during the moon's quarter phases. That's when the sun pulls against the moon gravitational pull instead of with it. During these tides, they result in the lowest high tide and the highest low tides. In other words, the least extreme difference between low and high tides are called the neap tides. Questions. You can go ask yourself these questions. What's your favorite phase of the moon? Do you think we could live on the moon? And would you take a trip to the moon? And here's my sources. You guys can go search the moon yourselves and see what you find interesting. And thank you for tuning in.